Governments around the world that want to censor have very time-tested and efficient tactics for getting the public not only to agree to that censorship, but even to cheer it and to crave it and to demand more of it. And we're seeing that now. As we talked about on last night's show, there are people, primarily on the right, who have built very prominent and lucrative media careers, largely by denouncing state censorship and cancel culture, people with whom I have been aligned in that cause for quite some time, who have now turned around this week and completely reversed themselves by cheering for censorship of anybody who criticizes Israel or who expresses solidarity with the Palestinians, because now the issue is one they feel very passionate about, just like the left feels very passionate about the views they want censored on race or gender ideology or misogyny or xenophobia. There are a lot of people who feel very, very, very strongly about this war, even though they don't live in Israel. They live in the United States or the West. And the very same people who have been crusading as free speech champions are now cheering as governments around the West, bureaucrats, people based in Brussels, France and Germany and the UK, they're cheering them as they now start fortifying their censorship powers in the name of the war in Israel. It's amazing to watch, but what's even more amazing and more alarming is how far this censorship is now going. We reported on several cases last night that were already disturbing from the UK Home Secretary and from the mayor of Toronto. But what France and Germany did today has taken it to not just a new level for this war, but a new level of censorship that I don't recall really seeing before in quite this blunt and extreme of an extent. Here from the BBC today, the headline is accurate and stark. France bans all pro-Palestinian demonstrations. All pro-Palestinian demonstrations are banned in France. The French Interior Minister has banned all pro-Palestinian demonstrations in the country. Quote, in a statement, Gerard Darmanin, I had a viewer generously offering to help me with my French pronunciations. Noam Chomsky once explained to me why, once you reach a certain age, your bones in your face ossify, the parts of your brains that helps with accents stops growing. And the famous linguist explained to me that it is almost impossible to learn new accents as you get older. I'm not near the age where that's yet happened, but I'm approaching it, so I don't know how successful I'm going to be, but I appreciate the offer. In any event, the French Interior Minister, quote, ordered foreign nationals who break the rules to be systematically deported. The move comes as European governments fear a rise in anti-Semitism triggered by the Israel-Hamas war. While most parties have condemned Saturday's, quote, terrorist attack and expressed support for Israel's right to respond. Let's say that again. Just like in the U.S., most parties in France condemned what Hamas did on Saturday in Israel as a terrorist attack and expressed support for Israel's right to respond. That is basically the overwhelming consensus of mainstream political parties in the U.S. and Canada and Europe. Despite that, and even the initial response from Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who was the far left candidate in the leader of the France Unbowed Party, he was also pretty supportive of Israel and viciously denouncing Hamas, like all decent people did, even though it was a little more equivocal. But his statement caused a lot of controversy. A statement by the party referred to the Hamas attack as, quote, an armed offensive of Palestinian forces, prompting fierce criticism from other parties, including left-wing allies such as the socialist and communist parties. But the point here is that the French government has now officially banned protests. So, for example, you're a citizen of France, either a naturally born citizen or a naturalized one, and your government has announced that they intend to fully support Israel's attack on Gaza. And again, put aside what your actual views are. Let's just focus for a minute on the issue of free speech, because I always argue when it comes to free speech and censorship that one's views of one's opinion of the views being censored don't matter. Obviously, the whole point is that you're defending the right of citizens, your fellow citizens, to express views, not only that you dislike, but sometimes that you find genuinely offensive or dangerous. I mean, the people on the left who we often criticize, who support censorship, genuinely believe that the views they want censored are dangerous and hateful and bigoted and likely to incite violence against black people or against women or against trans people. They do genuinely believe that. They believe that as much as a lot of newfound American neocons and people on the right who now support censorship feel about the war in Israel. They feel just as strongly. But the point is that you're supposed to defend the right of your fellow citizens to express views you dislike. So imagine you're a citizen of France and you want to have a protest against your government's support for Israel by denouncing the Israeli occupation of the West Bank or the blockade of Gaza, or you want to criticize Israel for using excessive force in Gaza. You now are barred by law from having that kind of protest. If, though, you want to have a protest supporting France's policy of giving aid to Israel in the war and you want to have a pro-Israel rally, you're totally free to do that, because that's aligned with the French government's war policy. You're just not allowed to dissent from the French government's policy. This is the same thing France and the EU did at the start of the war with Ukraine and Russia. Obviously, their view, the French view, the EU view, was the same as the US government, the same as the Biden administration. We are going to intervene in that war. We're going to support the war by supporting Ukraine and fueling the proxy war. And they immediately started enacting laws that, for example, made it illegal for platforms to allow to be heard Russian state media like RT or Sputnik. Remember, Rumble is unavailable in France because the French government threatened to ban Rumble nationwide if it didn't remove RT. Rumble said, we don't support RT, we don't support or oppose any media outlet, that's not our role, we just allow anyone to upload their videos to our platform, and we're not going to start arbitrating who can be heard and who can't. That's the whole point of a free speech platform. And the French said, under European law, even though Rumble's not based in Europe and not a European company, so now it means that social media platforms have to censor every government's on every government's orders. It's exactly what the EU did with the war in Ukraine. They're justifying censorship. They're threatening Twitter, as we have reported. The EU is, based on the ground that because Twitter won't censor enough, there's pro-Russian propaganda. Every war, every crisis, like the COVID crisis, is seized upon by authorities and officials throughout the West now to justify censorship, and that's all they're doing here. They know that people feel very strongly about the war in Israel, and they're exploiting those emotions to say, we need the power to ban protests that deviate from government policy. I hope that you are not supportive of that, no matter how strongly you feel about what Hamas did or about Israel. But as we're going to show you, a lot of people, including ones who have built their media career on opposing censorship and cancel culture, are in fact cheering France, cheering French officials. It's not just France, it's Germany. Here from Reuters, there you see the headline, Germany bans pro-Palestinian group Samadum. Germany will ban the pro-Palestinian group Samadum, Chancellor Olaf Scholz said on Thursday, adding that its members were celebrating Islamist Hamas terror in Israel on German streets. Quote, our law governing associations is a sharp sword, and we as a strong constitutional state will draw this sword, Scholz said in an address to Parliament in Berlin. The group has been organizing pro-Palestinian protests and is now monitored by Berlin's domestic intelligence agency, according to German magazine Der Spiegel. Again, we cover censorship. It's one of the primary topics that we report on. It's something of great concern to us for reasons we've gone over many times before. And one of the things that has been happening over the last 6 years, especially since the UK approved Brexit and that Trump won the election, was that Western establishments and their authorities have decided that free speech can no longer be tolerated, that it's too dangerous. And yet, watching a country like France ban not all protests about the war, just protests that support one side of the war but not the other, and watching Germany say they're banning an entire group, a party, because they're pro-Palestinian and putting them under the monitoring of their domestic intelligence services should be extremely disturbing to everybody, and yet it's not. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.